Maybe we do the refuge and bodhicitta. Um, it was at the very last of that you just shared before. Yeah. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create to listen to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient. Sangye Chodan Soke Sonam La Chanchu Pado Tanika Dagi Choche Give Sonam Nola Pente Sangye Joba Sangye Chodan Soke Sonam Chanchu Pado Tanika Dagi Choche Give Sonam Nola Pente Sangye Joba. So in order to generate any kind of spiritual realizations, and especially the Bodhisattva mind, as well as once you have generated, in order to maintain that and in order to improve that, then we need to clear all the obstacles for the cultivations of those realizations and for the improvement in that. And we need to gather all the conducive conditions for that. And so therefore, as a part of that, then, purification, the practice of purifications is to clear and to purify all the obstacles for our spiritual realization, and especially the Bodhisattva mind. And then, to create the right conducive conditions, cooperative, supportive conditions, then, engaging into the practice such as extensive offerings. And so I think in the second chapters, there was an extensive offerings, the practice of offerings, and there was a practice of prostrations. That is part of both purification and accumulation of merit. And then most part of the whole chapter is on purifications. And in order to have an effective purification, then we need to have 4 open-end powers that need to gather all of them, and then so the open-end power of the reliance or objects, that's taking refuge and generating bodhicitta. So that's been finished. And then also the open-end power of strong regret and remorse for the negative karma that we have created in the past. And most part of this chapter is mostly on that, because when you have strong regret and remorse, then it is easy to have others. And so that is where the focus is. And then next, from today, is the open-end power of antidote, the open-end power of antidote, So the third open-end power of antidotes. So within that, then why we need to purify, why it is important to purify, through the examples and through the examples given. So that is where we are. We're in verse number 54. If I need to comply with a doctor's advice when frightened by the common illness, so of course, if we have some kind of illness, whatever illness it is, especially, we could have diabetes, we could have a heart attack, we could have blood pressure, we could have, like cancer and whatever, if we have those kind of any kind of disease, the fear of being unhealthy, the fear of losing our life. So we'll due to that fear of being unhealthy and due to the fear of losing the life, then we'll all try to find a doctor who can diagnose our illness and who can prescribe right treatment for that, And once we have found that, we will really try to listen to their advice, comply their, whatever they say, if they say you should do more, change your diet, you should take this medication, you should do this exercise, whatever, So we will try to comply it because, because we don't want to get sick and we don't want to be unhealthy and we don't want to die, So therefore, that is why we listen to the doctors, when you have that. If that's the case, then here is saying, then how much more so when perpetually diseased by the manifold evils of desire and so forth, So therefore, if that's the case, then, when you have been inflated by the disease of, afflictive emotions such as strong attachment or desire, anger, ignorance, jealousy, and pride, so forth, when you have been inflated by those diseases, which can, those disease, can give many more, those diseases are much more dangerous than normal illness. Okay, normal illness, the worst it can do, it take one lifetime, hurt your one lifetime, the worst. But this afflictive, the disease of those afflictive emotions, it will hurt us, not just one lifetime, many lifetimes. It will hurt us for many lifetimes, and also it will create, interference to achieve, Bodhisattva and fully enlightenment, so whereas external illness cannot interfere for that spiritual realization, but those afflictive emotions, so they also interfere with our spiritual realizations. And also, due to afflictive emotions, many other physical disease can arise. People who have strong problem with, a lot of strong, what do you call, who always think me, I, there are research that they, those can produce, more physical illness as well. People who have a lot of strong anger and so forth, that can produce, physical illness as well, or it can increase your people with a lot of, when you are angry, there's more chance of having heart attack and heart related sickness. Also there is a lot of research, and individual experiences. Someone who have a diabetes, they clearly shows when their mind is not calm, and when their mind is so much anger or something disturb their mind, they can see their sugar level going up, pressure going up. So, therefore, compared to the common illness, this afflictive emotion illness or disease is much more worse. It's much more worse, you know. Therefore, if that is the case, then, you know, if we can find a doctor who can diagnose those illness, internal illness or those afflictive emotions, if they can, then they can prescribe exact cure for that, then of course we have to even comply and listen to their advices, even more than a doctor who treats the common illness, external illness. You know, so if we find a doctor who can treat this internal illness, which is the root of so many suffering, so many problems, then we should comply, we should listen to the advice of that, you know, even more. So that is what it's saying, you know, and therefore that is how, and the advice given by the doctor, the Buddha, the doctor for this illness, is to purify those afflictive emotions and the negative karma by applying the antidotes. That is the advice, that's the instructions, that's the cure. That is the cure, that is the treatment. The cure or treatment is through by applying the antidotes, the practice, the virtues, then purifying, you know, all this. So that is. And so next one, you know, how those disease, illness, or those afflictive emotion is, how they are so bad, or in terms of how they produce such a strong negative result, and how it is difficult to find the medicine to the cure, the medicine to overcome those illness of those afflictive emotions. So that's where. And if all people dwelling on this earth can be overcome by just one of these, so, you know, if all of the people dwelling on this earth can be overcome by just one of these means one of those illness of afflictive emotions. Let's take for anger. With one person's anger, it can destroy this planet. Imagine the leaders who have access to those nuclear weapons. If their mind is disturbed, with so much anger, hatred, and they can destroy the whole planet. They can destroy the whole planet, you know. They can destroy the whole planet. Also, it is said, you know, if you develop a strong anger towards the Bodhisattvas, you create such a negative karma as equal as destroying the whole, all the sentient beings in this earth, you know. So that is how strong that negative disease of the delusion is, you know. So, and if other medicine, so that is how bad it is, you know, how powerful negatively it is, you know. But in order to cure that kind of disease, afflictive emotion, you know, is not easy. So therefore, and if no others medicine cure them, is it to be found elsewhere in the universe, you know. So those internal afflictive, the disease of afflictive emotions, you know, is not easy to find anywhere. It's not like the external medications, which is more easy to find. In the cure, the cure, the antidotes to those afflicted emotions, because you cannot buy them, unlike like other, with money you can buy others medicines, there are many ways to deal with that, but these internal medicines cannot be bought by money, cannot be bought by external things, you have to develop yourself, cultivate and develop yourself, and it's not so easy, buying medicine is much more easier than cultivating Bodhisattva mind, patience, wisdom, So it is that medicine, that cure is not easy to find, And the Dharma that teach us how to cultivate that cure within ourselves is also not easy to find. The Dharma, that teach us how to cultivate that medicine, that cure within ourselves also is not easy to find the Dharma as well. You need a lot of merit to meet the Dharma, to encounter Dharma. Not everyone is able to encounter the Dharma, Sometimes Dharma is next to you and people still doesn't see that. When your karma is not there, sometimes I hear, different students, who come to Kopan Monastery in Nepal, and then, the Dharma is just next to their house. There's Dharma center next to their house in where they are staying. And they never noticed that. They never were aware of that, or it never caught their attentions. Because the karma is not ripened, it is just in front of you. And they have to come to Nepal to recognize that. That they appreciate the Dharma and they want, and then it is actually that there is a Dharma center just in their neighborhood. So what it shows is you need karma and to ripen it, to see it and to meet it, It's interesting, that I hear so many people about that. Yeah. And then next, therefore, if we have to listen to the doctors to cure the ordinary illness, then of course we have to listen to the supreme doctors, that can help us to cure this internal disease of the afflicted emotions. So that is what it is. Next one, 56. And not only we have to listen, then, yeah, okay. Then the intention not to act in accordance with the advice of all-knowing physicians. So that is the Buddha, all-knowing physicians, the Buddha, that can be uproot every misery. So, by overcoming those afflictive emotions, then you uproot all the suffering and misery that come due to that physical illness, emotional illness of the extremely bewildered and worthy of scorn, So it is like, having found the supreme physician, the doctor, who know exactly what our illness is and how to cure that, who can prescribe exact cure and medicine to cure that, and then not to listen to their advice, to cure that, not to listen and not to follow their instructions and their advice is a silly, is a ignorance. Because if you listen to their instructions, if you listen to their advice, then you can cure of those afflictive emotions, the illness of that afflictive emotions. And by having cured the illness of those afflictive emotions, then you can cure all the sufferings miserableness that arises due to the disease or those afflicted emotions. And so through that, then, being critical of ourselves for not doing that. So it's a way to encouragement, There are different ways of encouraging someone to practice or be better, Sometimes you have to be a little bit critical. Sometimes you have to pat. Do you get it? Sometimes being critical can inspire us to do more. But sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes because depending on what state of mind and what mood we are, but sometimes we need to be patted, or you are doing well, you are doing good. And that can be encouragement. But sometimes you need to be also a little bit critical as well. So here is kind of being a little bit more critical, And so the point is to inspire us, encourage us to practice more, And so, and so the way, so, if we listen to the advice, the instruction by the all-knowing supreme physicians, then, in order to overcome those afflictive illness or the afflictive emotions, then the cure is to cultivate all the spiritual realizations, such as loving kindness, compassion, bodhisattva, wisdom, and so forth. And in order to cultivate all this, then definitely, we need to also purify all the obstacles as well. So by overcoming the obstacles and then cultivating this antidote, and then we try to overcome destroy the illness or cure the illness of afflictive emotions. So that, then again, through different example, same meaning but different example, if you be seven, using different example. If I need to be careful near a small, ordinary precipice, then how much more so near the one of long duration that drove 1,000 miles. So, if we're walking by a cliff, where it might be cliff of 1 meter or 2 meters. And if you fall, if you don't be careful, if you don't be watchful, if you don't be cautious, you might misstep and you can fall from that cliff, which is not a long, maybe it could be just 1 meter, 2 meters, but you can injure yourself. It can damage yourself. You can hurt yourself. You can harm yourself. Therefore, when you go in those places, you become very careful, watchful, isn't it? When you are hiking or somewhere, when you see some narrow path and when there is a little bit of cliffs, we become very much more attentive, mindful, awareness, careful, because if you fall, there's danger you could hurt yourself, If that is the case, then, we have to be even more mindful, even more careful, even more watchful with our mind and our actions to the body, speech, and mind. We have to be very cautious, careful, mindful, watchful with our 3 doors, body, speech, and mind. If not, then we can fall into the cliff that is 1,000 miles, meaning, that we can be born in one of the lower realms and then experience sufferings, not just for a short period, but for a long time, And so compared to our physical hurt and damage that could do to us by falling from that cliff, by not being mindful, is nothing compared to not being aware and mindful and watchful of the 3 doors and then falling in one of the lower realms and the suffering one can experience there for such a long duration. That's in terms of duration, in terms of intensity of suffering, there's no comparisons. And so therefore, we have to be even much more mindful, careful, watchful with our doors, 3 doors. You know, and that is how we apply the antidotes. That is how we apply the antidotes, by being mindful and watchful with our 3 doors. Through that kind of mindful, watchful, careful, we don't allow to have any unwholesome, negative speech, physical actions and thoughts, and we try to direct our 3 doors toward more virtues, and when we direct our 3 doors to more virtues, that's the antidotes, So we rely on the power of the antidotes, any virtues through any of the 3 doors, virtues through our body, speech, and mind, all of them act as antidotes, to the negative karma. So, So next one, we need to purify, and in order to purify, then we need to rely on the antidotes to purify. The antidote, we need to rely on the antidote to purify, and not only we need to purify by relying on the antidote, we need to do that quickly instead of postponing it. We need to do that quickly. So that is where next verse. Verse number 58. It is inappropriate to enjoy myself, thinking that today alone I shall not die, for inevitably the time will come and when I shall become nothing, So basically saying, sometimes we get under influence by the laziness, When we think of doing purifications or virtues, engaging in any practice, virtues, or we think, I can do tomorrow, we feel a little bit lazy today. I can do tomorrow, or I can do next week, or next month, or next year, We keep on postponing in that way, as though the time is waiting for us all the time, as though the time is waiting to us until we finish doing all this practice. But the time does not wait for us. It does not wait for us. So, so when you have that, it is a sense of feeling that, death is not going to, end of our life is not going to come very quickly. But that can be very misleading. That can be very misleading. Misleading and betraying, because we do not know. We do not know. We do not know when our life will come to end. It could come in our next 10 years, could come in 5 years, could come in within this years. It could come within this month, this week, within these 24 hours. Nobody can say for sure that it will not come. Yeah, things can shift so quickly. Never know. Yeah, even here, we are kind of, we have few students who have encountered health issues, suddenly, and someone, diagnosed with cancer recently, and then within a few months, everything go down, and then last couple of weeks, it went so bad, now the possibility, that they might be gone, that person might be gone, the student can be gone within less than a week, and nobody nobody saw that coming, so far, so quick. But that could happen to us. Suddenly tomorrow I might not feel well and I go to the hospital, and then they could find out something that I haven't experienced before, and that could suddenly change my life quickly. Or, who knows, I could have heart attack suddenly, that moment here, I could, when I go to bathroom, I could sleep and I could bang myself. And so, and so all these are possibility. It's not just kind of making your mind, but is something possibility that happens to so many people all the time. And so we are no exception. We are not exceptions. So those things could happen to us as well. And therefore, since that could happen to us, meaning that, the end to our life can come any moment, therefore, try to apply the antidote now and try to purify now without postponing it while the time is with us at the moment. We do not know how much time we have. This 24 hour might be our last time for us to do that, or maybe, just 1 week, maybe just lucky, just 1 month, if more lucky, maybe 1 year, but we never know. And so therefore, we have to purify. By applying the antidotes, we need to purify as soon as possible without any delay, because death is going to come absolutely sure. No one can escape within the samsara. No one can escape. That is the fact, inevitable fact, reality. But the one thing that we don't know is when it is going to come. We know it is coming, but we don't know when it's going to come. And so therefore, we should start applying the antidote right now without postponing it. So that is, so without being lazy, we should try to practice now, and postponing it by being lazy. So, again, what can grant me fearless? How can I be surely free from this? If I shall eventually become nothing, how can I relax and enjoy myself? Again, sometimes we might think, well, everyone's going to die anyway. We all are going to die. So why even think about it? It's useless to think about it, and it is useless to fear of that. We are going to die and nothing can stop that. So why even worry about it? Why even think about it? Why be fearful of that? Sometimes we could have that kind of attitude, But as many, definitely, being fear of the death itself is not healthy, because definitely nothing can stop the death within the samsara. But being fearful of dying without being able to practice the Dharma, it has purpose. Because you have that fear, then it will encourage you to practice. Because the fear of dying without being able to practice the Dharma, the fear of dying without being able to purify all the negative karma and the delusions. If you have that fear will help you to purify them. It will help you to practice the Dharma. And so therefore, that kind of fear is healthy fear. The fear of just dying is unhealthy fear because you cannot do anything. You cannot stop that dying anyway. But healthy fear help you to encourage you to be on the path and to do something to stop. And with that healthy, if you practice now, then at the time of death, you will be fearless. You will be fearless, At the time, then you will be fearless because you have prepared yourself. Now you have nothing to fear about it. You have prepared yourself with the practice and everything. Now you have nothing to, yeah. So, mm, mm. And so therefore, in thinking in that way, so no one can grant us that fearless, unless we practice, No one can grant us fearless unless we engage in the practice. If we engage in the Dharma practice, apply the antidotes and purify and work with our delusions, then you can develop fearless yourself. But that fearless cannot be granted by someone else, But if we practice, then you can achieve that fearlessness, And how can I surely free from this, How can we surely free from that fear and develop fearlessness is through the practice. If you do that, there are many stories of Dharma practitioners, because they have practiced. When the death comes, they have no fear. They were even kind of looking forward to it, No fear, but even looking forward to it. And they reach that point because they have prepared themselves so well to the practice, So therefore, and because we are going to die one day, and therefore we shouldn't be so lazy at the moment, and not do any practice and not to engage in any practice, And so again, trying to encourage yourself not to be lazy, and trying to encourage yourself to practice, do more practice. And through that practice, cultivate fearlessness, And Milereva, he said, he ran away to the mountains because of the fear. And then having practiced the Dharma, he reached the point of fearlessness. And that is exactly similar to this verse, what is, Milereva, he ran into the mountain because of the fear, because he had done so many negative karma earlier part of his life. So he was very fearful of what he did, how much negative karma he created, and the consequences of that. So because of that fearfulness, he ran into the mountain, to the search of the Dharma and to practice. And after he found the Dharma, and once he started to practice, he dedicated himself, then he became fearless of death and all that. And so, so that is also, we try to, if we can try to achieve that state, that would be wonderful to reach at that point of fearlessness, you know. If we are fearful now, you know, there's a point, and then if we practice, then we can reach fearlessness state later, you know. But if we don't have any fear now, and at the time of death, the fear ahead, there is nothing we can do about, you know, nothing much we can do to overcome the fearlessness. So anyway, so next one is, you know, again, cultivating a strong regret, you know, for having created a lot of negative karma meaninglessly, you know, without much meaning, not much meaning, meaninglessly, that we have created so much negative karma. So by recollecting and remembering that, then trying to generate a strong regret, you know. So what remain with me now from the terminated experience of the past? But, you know, so, you know, out of attachments, you know, out of attachments, that or greediness, you know, we have created, we have you know, experiences, many different experiences in the past, you know, in many other lifetimes, also in this lifetime, you know, we have enjoyed many other things, a lot of things, you know, samsaric enjoyment in our life. We have done so many different things, you know, out of attachments and so forth. But all of them is just a memory now, you know, it's gone. Nothing is there now. You know, all this is all, you know, that is remain with us is, you know, just a memory. Everything has, you know, nothing lasts. All of this experience didn't last. You know, we might have many, many great experience, but none of those experiences last. You know, they all are ever-changing nature. You know, nothing remain with us. The only thing that remain is just the memory, not the experience themselves. You know, nothing. You know, but through my great attachment to them, you know, but we were very attached to those experiences and the objects that give those experiences. So we're very attached to those, you know, and being attached to that, being attached to those experiences, which is no more there, being attached to those kind of experiences and to the object that give rise to those experiences, we're very attached to them. And out of that attachment, we create a lot of negative karma. And thereby going against my spiritual advice, master's advice. Therefore, out of attachment, we engage in a lot of negative karma. And by engaging a lot of those negative karma or negative actions, then we go against the advice of the Buddha. We go against the advice of our spiritual masters. We go against the Dharma. So we go all against, you know, have been going against all of that. So that by remembering that, then again, we try to generate a regret, you know, try to generate regret, thinking it's not worthwhile. It's not worthwhile, you know, it is not worthwhile to go against the advice of the Buddha, the Dharma, our spiritual masters, you know, in order to, out of attachment, in order to experience some of those unstable samsaric pleasure, which does not last for long, so that is, so, and then, making a strong determinations, not to go against the advice, instructions of the Buddha, Dharma, and our spiritual masters. Instead, try to follow their advice. And following their advice means engaging the virtues instead of engaging non-virtues. Engaging the virtues is the antidote, the power of antidote. Engaging virtues, the virtues are the antidote towards the negative karma, towards and the delusions. And so, and same thing, why we shouldn't be attached to our, families, friends, and why we shouldn't create negative karma by being attached to them, why we shouldn't create negative karma by being attached to them. If we are not attached to them, we will not create a lot of negative karma because of that attachment to them, so that is where it is. Having departed from this life and from all my friends and relatives, if all alone I must go elsewhere, what is the use of making friends and enemies? When our life comes to the end, however, whenever, we leave everyone behind. We leave everyone behind, We leave everyone behind. Our relative, our friends, the object of attachment, all the object of attachment, as well as, all the other material things that we're attached to. We leave everything behind and we go empty-handed and alone by ourselves to the next journey. We came in this world by ourselves and we depart this world by ourselves. We cannot take our friends and relatives with us. Even they want to come with us, we have to go by ourselves, alone. And so therefore, there's no point of being so attached to some and having so much aversion to others, and thereby, making friends and enemy, is not worthwhile. In such a short period, it's like, we are on vacations for a short period, few people together, and it is not worthwhile fighting against each other and all of fighting with some, being so attached to that, taking side with each other. This is not worthwhile. We are here only for a very short time. In same way, so therefore, being attached to some, then it give rise to aversion and anger to some others. And due to that kind of attachment and anger, then we create so much negative karma. And so therefore, by seeing, there's no point and there's no meaning and benefit in that. And therefore, I should not be so attached. When we are so attached, we suffer due to attachment. We suffer, Not only we suffer immediately because of our attachment, but also we create a lot of negative karma. you know. And then again, we suffer in the future as a result of those negative karma. We suffer. So we suffer now, we suffer in the futures, you know. And because of attachments, again, we discriminate with others. Discrimination comes because of attachments, you know. Because we're attached to someone, we're not attached to others. And so therefore, the discrimination comes. Because then we try to protect those who we're attached to, and we try to kind of, you know, have a bad feeling those who are on the other side, and the discrimination arises. Through discriminations, then we create suffering and pain to others. So then, you know, it leads to our own suffering. It leads to suffering for others, and so therefore, it's saying is a meaningless, is a worthless, you know, to be so attached. So that is what it is. Mm. Mm. And secondly, now next one is, you know, how we should put a lot of effort in the method, day and night, to purify all the negative karma and the delusions. How can I surely free from unwholesomeness? So all this negative karma and non-virtues or unwholesome actions, as well as the afflictive emotions, you know, the cause of those negative karma, which are the source of miseries, you know. So all this negative karma, as well as the delusions, are the very root of all our suffering, all our problem, all our miserable, you know, miseries, you know. And continually day and night should I only consider this. So continually day and night, we should always think, how can I surely free, you know, from all these negative karma and the delusions, you know. So, and we should only have that kind of thought, you know. And so when you have that thought, you know, day and night, you know, how should I free from all this negative karma and the delusion, which are the source of all our sufferings? Then, you know, then you feel that I have to purify them. I have to purify them. I need to purify them. In order to purify them, you need to cultivate the antidote, the power of the antidotes, the virtues, you know. The antidote is the virtues actions, you know. So that is. So it says, you know, by contemplating on karma, law of cause and effect, you know, how our negative karma lead to the suffering, the result, you know, and therefore with that, through the understanding of the unbetraying, infallible law of cause and effect, the karma, then, you know, we try to not to create any more negative karma, and negative karma that were already created before, we try to purify them. And then the actual purification itself, and in order to purify, then again, you know, in order to purify, then identifying the negative karma or negative actions that we are going to purify, you know. So whatever has been done by me, you know, through ignorance or unknowing, you know, so whatever negative karma that we have created in the past due to the ignorance, you know, due to not knowing the reality, the truth, due to the ignorance of that, whatever negative karma created. So in terms of that, be it breaking of vows or did by nature wrong. So there are two kinds of negative karma we could create. One is be it by breaking the vows. So that means, when you are taking a vows, by nature is not a negative, but when we go against it, we create negative karma because we are taking the vows. For example, drinking. Okay, if you are taking a vows not to drink, okay, and if you drink, then you break your vows, your precepts, and because by breaking that precept, you create negative karma. But if someone has not taken a vows, drinking itself is not a wrong or negative. But if that is the case, then why do we have to take the precept? Because it can lead to a lot of problems. Drinking itself is not a negative, but when you don't know, it can lead you to a lot of things, because when you overdrink it, because you can drink it, so sometimes you overdrink it. When you overdrink it, you get drunk. When you get drunk, then people become crazy, they do all kind of things. A lot of countries, domestic violence is from the drinkings, so many countries, one of the main cause of domestic violence is when people get drunk, husband get drunk, come home, and they beat up their wives, children. When they are not drunk, they will never behave that way. When they are not drunk, some of them very kind, caring. But when they are drunk, then, they lose their mind. And then they become very violent, and do a lot of other things that damage themselves and others, that harms others and themselves. And so that is why we take the precept, But drinking itself is not a wrong or negative. So that is but when if we have taken the vows and if we do that, then it is, so there are many other things, for example, that is more with the lay, but for the monks, there are many vows like that, entertainments, for example, singing out of attachment, singing and all of that, singing itself is not a negative. Dancing itself is not a negative. It's not a wrong, but there is a vows not to do them out of attachments. And the reason you take vows is to stop you from engaging the object that increase your attachments, that increase your attachments, and that make you distracted from your practice. And so that is the way to help our practice, even though it by itself is not negative, but when we engage in it, if we don't have the right tool to deal with, then it can, become source of a lot of problems, so for example, so that is what it means. So through that is one way of creating negative karma. And then the other one, or did by nature wrong. What it means is that one, whether you take precept or not, whether you have taken vows or not, if you engage in that, is wrong by its nature. It's negative by nature, such as taking the lives of others, stealing others' things. So, taking the lives of others, stealing others' things, is not about whether you have taken vows or not. You create negative karma by engaging those, because it is by by nature is a negative, by nature is a wrong, because it harms others and yourself, and so that is so therefore we create negative karma, either which are nature, which are by wrong in nature, or negative in nature, or some of them which are not negative in nature or wrong in nature, but because of breaking the vows that we have taken. And so therefore I'm going to purify all of those two different kind of negative karma that we have created unknowingly, so that is the negative karma that is going to be purified, what you are going to purify. So that is so how you are going to purify, how you are going to purify, the next one, so how you are going to purify is, I humbly confess it all, so, and to whom you are going to confess? In the presence of the protectors, so the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas and their wisdom, Buddha Dhamma Sanghas, and especially all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, those protectors, so I'm going to confess all my negativities that I've created, whether it is by breaking the vows, or whether it is by engaging by naturally negative, all those whatever negative karma that we have created. I'm going to confess without hiding them. I'm going to disclose in front of all the protector Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and I'm going to purify for that. And how we do it? By hand folded, prostrating myself again and again. So, how you are going to purify is, with hand folded, and by remembering all negative karma I've created, and recollecting, regretting them, and then in front of the Buddha Dhamma Sangha, I go refuge to them, and I confess in front of them. And the way I do, as the antidotes, the power of antidote here is prostrating with a strong faith, to the Buddha Dhamma Sangha as a way of purifying. Then you do the prostrations again and again, many prostrations, And my mind, terrified by the miseries to come, by understanding, if I don't purify now, I will experience all the sufferings and miseries of consequences of those negative karma. By remembering that, then we try to purify that, So here you give one example of frustration as the power of antidote, as a way to purify it. Of course, then again, by reciting the mantras, like Bodhisattva mantras, we can do that too, as a purification, prostrating, whether by reciting 35 Buddha's names, whether reciting the verse. You can also prostrate by reciting the Bodhisattva mantras, or you can do prostrate by reciting the refuge, and so, or you can do whatever different practice of that. You can also prostrate and purify in that way, But also, this is not the only way to purify. There are many different ways of purifying. Engaging different virtues, meditating as a purification, meditating on emptiness of the negative karma, the act of creating, and the subject, the person who is creating. So meditating on emptiness of all of that also is a way to purify. As a way to purify, we can do that. As a purifications, again with a regret and going refuge and general bodhicitta, and then with a strong determination not to engage in that, then we engage into making holy objects, making stupa statues, printing Dharma books, or helping, sponsoring, or making donations towards that, or feeding and supporting those who are in the needs, through your generosity, as a way of purifying, mm, or reciting, sutras as a way of purifying, so there's many different virtues that one can engage as purifications, okay? And so then the next one is, the opening power of resolutions. Yeah. So there are 4 opening powers. We talk about the opening power of reliance, opening power of regret, the opening power of the antidotes. So we finished those 3, and the last one, the antidote, the opening power of resolutions. Promise not to do again, promise, and so that one's, I beseech all the guides of the world, so all the Buddhas, who are the guides of the world, the guides of all sentient beings, to please accept my evil and wrongs, please accept all the negative karma, all the negative behavior and actions I create through my 3 doors, which are wrong. Since those are not good, since I understand all those negative actions that I've created 3 doors, they are not beneficial, they are not right, and they are wrong. That is the source of suffering to others and oneself. So I recognize that, all of that. Because of that recognition, because of that awareness, because of that understanding, in the future, I shall do them no more, in the future, therefore, I will never do it. So they're making that strong resolutions, strong determinations, strong promise, strong commitments, not to engage into such negative actions of 3 doors anymore. So that is power of the resolutions. Okay. And with that, then we finish. So that with that, again, you can see within this 3 chapters, chapter number 2, there's mainly the 3 what do you call, the purification and the 4 opening powers. Okay, so some opening power is short, some opening power more extensive, and especially the opening power, the regret, is the most that we see. Okay. So any questions, comments? Yes. Yes, Brittany.
Thank you so much, Geshe. Your teachings are really motivating and inspiring. I fall into that lazy category for sure. So this has really been so helpful. And I'm also very grateful that it's recorded so I can return to it again and again. So thank you very, very much. I had a couple of questions, but maybe I'll start with this one. So when you were speaking about Milarepa and you made the comment that he went into the mountains out of fear, it kind of made me think a little bit about when we practice the 4 opponent powers, at least in the West, there's always an emphasis on clean, clear regret as opposed to guilt. Regret is helpful, guilt is very unhelpful. And so thinking about that story of Milarepa, when you said that he went into the mountains out of fear, probably my Western bias, but my thought was, oh, that sounds like guilt. So could you help me understand, maybe what we know about Milarepa's state of mind, and I'm sure it wasn't guilt. Could you help differentiate that for me, please, because it was based on past actions? Thank you.
Yeah, I think, on practical level, he had fear of his life because he was being chased and going to be killed by his uncle's families because he did so much damage to them, through his black magic hell, on their wedding, his uncle's children's wedding, through that, he killed so many horses on that wedding and so many of them. So once they figured out it was him who was trying to do that, then people were kind of looking for him, and his life was in danger, So he ran away in the mountains, and later he regretted what he had done, he regretted what he had done. And then he found, he was in search of the Dharma, and he found the teachers, another teacher before Milarepa, Marva, and that teacher sent him to the Marva. So definitely to begin with, there was a fear of his life. That was why he, on practical level, he ran away, to the mountains. But also, I'm sure that he has also fear about the consequences of his negative karma, for what he have done, So the only way for him to kind of purify is through the practice of the Dharma, The only way him to clean that, the only way him to clear that, the only way him to come out of that is through the practice of the Dharma, And so therefore he was in search and look of the Dharma. So yeah, I don't know exactly how guilt is defined, that emotions, to really understand different from the regret. And I think there is I think His Holiness has shared, and many other teachers has also shared, there are certain emotions that is not common in other culture or communities, and so therefore they cannot find the right words in their language, in Tibetan language. Self-hatred was one thing that His Holiness was very he couldn't understand that when he first came about that concept, because that was not so common in that. And then there was some problem with not being able to find a word for the Tibetan word for that. And I think guilt is another emotions that in Tibetans we don't have that word for that, because this kind of emotion doesn't seem to be at least common in the past, even though there might be, but I don't know, but still that kind of, and I don't know whether that comes from certain historical background, I don't know. So how do you define the guilt, the feeling of guilt, exactly, the definitions of that emotion, that feelings, the guilt?
As you were speaking, it occurred to me that self-centeredness is a key component. For guilt as opposed to regret, right, which would be more focused on others. That feels a little bit obvious now, but it didn't occur to me previously.
And there are some people who mentioned, I don't know how accurate, but I have been kind of told by many students over the times, many friends over the time, because I'm just trying to understand where the guilt come from and why it is so prominent and all of that. And there is, among many people, there is some kind of thinking, you know, in the West, there is a strong guilt because they say it comes from, I don't know again how accurate what they think, how or what they think, from the concept of Christian what do you call cultural influence. So even you don't believe in Christian anymore, but still your culture is very much influenced by that. So there is that part. And so therefore guilt comes from original sin. The idea of original sin, you know, the Adam and who was that? They didn't listen to they ate the apple, you know, so they went against that. And so there is kind of, you are born with that original sin. Everyone is born with that original sin, you know. And because they said there's something to do with that, you know, even you don't believe with that, but your culture is very much influenced by still by that strong is still kind of in culturally in kind of hidden in a way, you know, in a culturally very strong. And so because of that, I think that is where some people say that the guilt comes from. But I don't know, you know, that is at least comment made by many people over the time. And it's very different from the Buddhist because in Buddhism, we have Buddha nature. That is our original kind of the basic. So it is the opposite of that, you know. All sentient beings, not only human, but all sentient beings have this, you know, original or basic goodness, you know. And so when you believe that there is that, maybe there's less guilt of that, you know, because basically you are good, even though you make mistake, you know. Whereas or other, even you are good, basically you are bad. Do you get it? You are being a nice now, but basically you are a bad. So it is a very different approach. And so that is how maybe the guilt can be, maybe that's where guilt could have played a role in that. At least that is according to some of the people's observations or their understanding, impressions. And I do feel there is some point of that. There is some point in that, you know. It's the guilt, it seems like that you have no solutions. With the regret, there is a solutions, you know. Okay. Then what was your other questions?
Maybe I'll ask this one. So thinking about I think it was on verse 56, we were speaking about this balance between like inspiration and encouragement as opposed to maybe being a little bit critical of ourselves. I was reflecting a little bit that that's obviously something that develops over time, you know, finding that right balance, and because our capacity grows over time. I think that's natural. But then I always think about, okay, well, you know, what's the practical question that I can ask myself to being a lazy student? You know, what's the practical question I can ask myself to make sure that I'm, you know, finding the right balance there? Because I think it's easy to say like, oh, you know, looking back on the years, I've made progress and that's good enough. But I bet I could, you know, do some deeper reflection Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think definitely when you are lazy, being critical can help us, you know. But when we are, you know, and sometimes we know when we become also too kind of too pride or arrogant, being critical helps help you to be more grounded, you know. And then when we feel low, when our mind feel low, then giving encouragement by patting at you yourself, you know, saying, oh, you have made progress, you know, compared to 5 years ago, you have made this progress and you have made that progress. So that can be helpful to kind of give a little bit more encouragement when our mind is feeling a little bit low, you know. But when our mind is feeling, oh, I'm doing great, or I've done, you know, when it can lead to kind of unhealthy pride and arrogant, then being critical can help us to be a little bit more grounded. Yeah. Any other questions? Any others? Does anyone has any other questions? If not, then we can also do the dedications. Yeah. May all beings everywhere plagued by the suffering of body and the mind obtain an ocean of happiness and joy by virtues of my merit. May no living creature suffer, commit evil, or evil for it. May no one be afraid, be ridden with a mind weighed down by depression. May the blind see forms and the deaf hear sounds. May those whose bodies are worn with toil be restored, finding repose. May the naked find clothing, hungry find food. May the thirsty find water and delicious drink. May the poor find wealth, those weak with sorrow find joy. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvest. May all medicine be effective and wholesome prayer bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be free from their ailments. Whatever disease there in the world, may they never occur again. May the frightening sick be afraid, and those bound be free. May the powerless find power, and may people think of benefiting each other for as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. Due to the merit of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel Bodhisattva that has not arise and grow, and may that which arise and not diminish but increase more and more. Thank you very much, everyone. Again, thank you very much for your time, your patience, and your, yeah, thank you.
Geshe,
Yes.
on behalf of Gompa Luda, I would like to offer you this kata.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much for your teachings. May you live long, may you continue to teach. And we'd like to request that you return to teach us on chapter 3 of A Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life.
Thank you, thank you. I will.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Geshe.
Hopefully see you in person soon. Thank you.
That would be great.
Okay, thank you. Take care, everyone. Good night. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.